Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
It's Monday. Welcome back to the Buckeye Blitz. I wanted to apologize to everybody that I said on Friday, on Buckeye Friday, I would post something on Saturday after the scrimmage. We lost our internet because of the crazy windstorm, so I couldn't post anything. So I'm sorry. Uh, Mother Nature had different plans, so we're back now. We're up and running. I hope that you guys had a great weekend. I appreciate you joining me today, and we'll give you a brief scrimmage update based on what I could see, what I've heard, and what I know. And if you could hit that like button, it's definitely helping with our Ohio State football related content. One of the suggestions I had on Twitter, and I appreciate my friends on Twitter, was to add more people into the mix and have some guests. So actually, following the spring game, I will have one of my close friends and fellow Buckeye fandom folks joining me, and I'll introduce you to him on that podcast. So, and he will be a periodic guest, and I'm excited for that. So if you're interested in that, you can find us in a variety of ways. So you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on our website at thebuckeyeblitz.godaddysites.com, and then on Facebook at the Buckeye Blitz podcast. So be using that for dropping content, and then of course I'm on Twitter under my own name. So find us there. Now for the important stuff. Our first scrimmage of the year leads me to my scrimmage notes. So realistically, I didn't know how much I was going to glean from this or how much I would, come away with. But during the last competitive period, especially with the quarterbacks, each quarterback had 4 drives. Kyle had 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Devin had 1 touchdown and 1 field goal. I thought Devin Brown overall had a good day. He was staring receivers down. He was holding the ball a little bit long. I know Coach Dave, and I think on a few plays, blew the play dead because he just held the ball too long. So had an okay day. Kyle McCord played much better in the second half than he did in the first half. He made some plays with his legs. He scored what he thought was a touchdown late in the game in the second half in the scrimmage, and then broke contain a few times and threw a couple frozen ropes on the run, threw a touchdown on the run, and so he definitely is more mobile than I think a lot of people, even including myself, gave him credit for. I've said all along, if I had to start a game tomorrow, Kyle McCord would be the starter. He even had, I noticed, a designed run in the red zone, so there's that. If you were going to walk away today, McCord looked better than Brown, looked more settled, and Brown looked like a redshirt freshman. So, one thing I need to take back from some of my earlier podcasts is I basically thought that Devin Brown was much more athletic than Kyle. Maybe not, based on what I saw today. Maybe, Kyle's kind of grown into his body, he's gotten stronger, and he's improved his athleticism. So, other notes, Jaden Ballard is having a monster spring. He was one of the guys I identified early in one of my early January podcasts. I thought could have a big year, especially since Emeka and Julian aren't practicing this spring. And listen, I like Julian Fleming. I don't have anything against the kid. But I think we've seen what he brings, and he doesn't have the top end speed that Jaden Ballard does. So Ballard needs to be on the field. Like, that guy can take the top off a defense. He straight just juked Jordan Hancock out of his shoes for a 50-yard score. He was 20 yards ahead of Jordan Hancock today for a 50-yard score. So I think that Ballard is going to take reps from Julian Fleming at the Z, and if he's not starting, it's a crime, honestly. Like, the guy, he needs to be on the field. So, I'm not saying that Fleming can't see the field, and maybe, in 11 personnel, Fleming could be on the field. I think Fleming's a mismatch in 11 personnel as the fourth wide receiver, but give me Jaden Ballard. He reminds me of Devin Smith, the way that Devin Smith could just take the top off of defense. So the other thing I would say, Caleb Brown continues to impress out of like the wide receivers group from last year that everybody was like, well, what are they doing? Yeah, he's going out and getting the football. He looks good. Jelani Thurman, a true freshman tight end from this year, had what would have been a game-winning touchdown, and looks the part for as far as a true freshman. He had a couple plays. Marv didn't go through full contact, but I think it's really more just to save him, and like we know what he brings. Carnell Tate was rotating with the ones, so if you take anything away from my podcast today, Carnell Tate, of all of those stud 5-star wide receivers that came in, was rotating with the ones and lost his black stripe. It's one of the earliest true freshman black stripe losses I can ever remember. So that's a big deal, and he's ready. Like he's just one of those kids that he came in and he looked. I'm not saying he couldn't fade, and it's just one spring practice and all of that. I take all of that into account, but to lose your black stripe that early is a big deal and a nice win for that young man, and I'm excited to see what his career turns into be. I hope he stays healthy. A lot of focus for me was on the offensive line. I will say immediately there's a giant difference. It's probably the largest gap of any position group that I see between the first and second team offensive line. The first team offensive line looks good, not great, good. But it's really concerning for depth. Josh Fryer looks the part. He didn't rotate at all. He was in with the ones the entire time. DJ Donovan Jackson looks like Donovan Jackson. Carson Hinsman looked good. And one of the things I know about playing center, as well as playing some of the safety positions, is if you aren't noticed, that's a good thing, because that means you aren't making mistakes. And so Carson Hinsman didn't make any mistakes. He looked pretty good. He looked comfortable. He continues to make strides. Again, in January, predicted he would be the starting center, and I'm not moving away from that. He was the guy that I thought all along would be the guy. Zen Mihalski and Tegra Shabola rotated. Zen had about 55, maybe 60% of the snaps. Tegra had the rest. Zen struggled against JTT. I mean, who wouldn't? But he got owned, absolutely owned on several plays by JTT. So you're not going to see too many JT Tulimolowaus on opposite teams until you get to maybe like Michigan and perhaps Wisconsin. But mildly concerning, because he got lit up. So we'll see what happens out of that. Nothing. It's the 6th practice of the spring, so breathe easy, folks. I'm interested to see what happens with Chip Trainium. I mentioned him previously, and he just looks different. He's just, his edge, his speed, his cut, he just looks like a different kind of back than what we have. So I want them to find a role for him, because the defense doesn't even look like they want to tackle him. They look like, I want this guy coming down at me. So I'm wondering if they couldn't use him in more of like a hybrid fullback-y type role, like a Mitch Rossi type role. And I remember, I think Brandon Sain and Boom Heron, when they would line up in the backfield together. So could you see a Chip Trainium and Trey Henderson or Dallin Hayden type thing? Speaking of, Dallin Hayden is a beast, and it looks like they're kind of afraid to tackle him too. So he looks thick, and that whole room has a big time chip on their shoulder right now. Like, they all look like they're pissed off and ready to just beat everybody up. So I guess that's a good edge to have as a running back, as far as I'm concerned. So that's really it for the offense. I thought, overall, good day, good play. I enjoyed watching what I saw of it. More to come on the quarterbacks, but we'll see kind of how things shake out. But if you were gonna make me choose today, Kyle McCord would be my starter just based off what I saw today, just for consistency and running the offense. So defensively, Jim Knowles last year, he said this out loud, and I'm just going to reiterate. He said last year they were installing the defense. This year they're about making plays in the defense. Big difference. So starting at safety again, and just the same as it was in the first practice, which I told you I was caught off guard by. But Josh Proctor, Lathan Ransom, and Cam Martinez. So Cam Martinez, wow, like talk about coming into your own. He looked really good in that nickel slot safety role. He was repping with the ones. He looked great in coverage. I know he got beat bad against Michigan last year, and I wonder if that's just like he wasn't playing that position a lot during the year. But Cam Martinez looked pretty good. Lathan Ransom was up closer to the line of scrimmage in that like bandit role, which is not where he played last year. Last year he was playing that adjuster or boundary safety, so where he was back in the middle of the field. So Ransom and Proctor have kind of switched. So Proctor was playing the adjuster role, kind of playing center field. Proctor's fast. He can really make up ground if a play breaks down. He's got good closing speed, so maybe that's why. And don't freak out, because Sonny Styles was on the field a ton. He was repping with the ones. He was in there. He was rotating. So no concern. Sonny Styles is going to be on the field. Jordan Hancock, other than the one ball where Ballard torched him, had a really, really good day. It was a double move, and I think that happened to him last year too. He got beat on a double move. I'm not trying to remember what game that was, but experience. Again, he was hurt a lot of last year. He was having a great spring last year, so I think what I will say is he had a great day marred by one bad play, which kind of sounds a lot like the defense last year. The other thing, and I've been touting this kid for a while too, Kenyatta Jackson. Looks like the real deal. I keep saying that. I've heard that a few times now. I've seen it. And somebody I was listening to, and it really makes sense. And I was trying to figure out who he reminded me of. And I'm not saying he's Nick Bosa. Not saying he's Nick Bosa, because he's not. But he has the kind of bend around the edge that's similar to what those guys had. And we haven't seen that. Even with Chase Young. Chase Young didn't have that kind of bend that the Bosas do, and that's why they're so dominant in the NFL. And I'm seeing that similarity out of Kenyatta Jackson. So watch for him this year in that two deep to be making plays, especially if Jack Sawyer or JTT need a rest or come off the field, in that rotation. So one of the other things I noticed today, really interestingly, is almost every time I saw pressure, it was Kenyatta Jackson or JTT. So very interesting to me. Michael Hall Jr. From the edge rushers, excuse me. Michael Hall Jr. put on a show. He absolutely just wrecked Vic Cutler. Vic Cutler was repping with the twos. Mike Hall Jr., it was one move and he was in the backfield. It was like one arm rip and he was in the backfield. So he has an amazingly quick first step. I expect him to have a fantastic year. I'm excited to see what he does now that he's fully healthy. Igbinosun, again, looks great. He reminds me, I've told you, he reminds me of Jeff Okuda. I'll continue to say that. He reminds me of Jeff Okuda. I'm excited about him. He's got long arms. He's tall. He's rangy. Malik Hartford was working in the rotation with the ones, which I thought was interesting as a true freshman. I'm not sure what to make of it other than, maybe they were just getting him in and working him, so that's good. Igbinosun also lost his black stripe, so good news there. Mari Abor made some plays. I told you in my last podcast I thought he was poised for another good season, and then this happened. So all of a sudden I see number 36 flying around at linebacker. I'm like, who the heck is 36? It was Gabe Powers. I know I've talked a little bit about him being in the two deep. I know he came in as a high 4-star. He kind of didn't get the pub that CJ Hicks did, and then all of a sudden he's in the two deep today. And he just jumped off the page. He was all over the place. He had tip balls, he had tackles, and just rangy and roaming and making plays. And so kudos to Gabe Powers, man. He kind of almost like was the forgotten guy because people were talking about Reed Carrico and CJ Hicks and some of the other players, and then all of a sudden Gabe Powers starts making plays in practice, and that's how you end up on the field on Saturdays. So good for that kid. Jack Sawyer had a good day for what it's worth. Sawyer looked completely different than last year. He looks comfortable. He had his hand in the dirt. He was having fun. He looks like he's back at home. So I'm excited to see what JT Tuilamolau and Jack Sawyer do on the edges, especially with Mike Hall in the middle. Steel Chambers had a sack. He was close to an interception. He should have had an interception. He made several other plays. I'll be interested to see how that turns out. From I'm interested to see, I'm wondering about defensive tackle on the defensive side of the football. It wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe go into the portal. Now, I know Caden McDonald's coming in this summer, Jason Moore, some of the other folks, but true freshmen, especially at defensive tackle, you don't typically see them play a lot. Caden McDonald is different. He's special. He's 325 or 330 pounds. He's a big guy. But right now, I really feel like they only have three. I think it's Ty Hamilton, Tyleek Williams, and Michael Hall Jr. And I think you need another piece for depth. So there's a kid out of Maryland. There's a kid out of Minnesota. Both have put their intentions in to transfer. We'll see. And then the other piece, and I mentioned it early in the podcast, is right tackle. Right tackle is unsettled for me as well. So that's what we gleaned. That's what we learned. Coach Day seemed happy about it in his post-game or post-scrimmage press conference. I'm excited to see what happens next. Thanks for taking this journey with me. Thanks for being patient. Sorry for the lateness of the podcast. I'll be back tomorrow, actually, with a Q&A Tuesday, and I'll take on a little bit of the questions that came in over the weekend about the scrimmage and about what we saw and about why I feel a certain way. Until then, I thank you. Appreciate your listening. Appreciate your time. If you could hit that like button, I'd appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, go Bucks.